Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to listen to the impact story, and obviously Nickel Day, and we'll be looking at our two key projects, which is Broken Hill, and also briefly at the end our Arkun project, which we think is starting to develop some very exciting results here back home in WA, which is where we started a long time ago. And so the key to a lot of the work that Impact's done over the years is really we have acquired and put together large strategic ground holdings in prospective parts of the continent. And our view is, look, if you're there long enough, you've got the money and the time, you'll eventually make a discovery if your ground selection is correct up front. And so we've got a very big ground holding at Broken Hill, principally for nickel copper PGE, but there's also silver lead zinc potential there. But increasingly now focusing back in WA with our Arkun project. We've got our Dunia Gold project that we'll be drilling between now and Christmas. And we are going through a rationalisation of our other projects in the eastern states. So there'll be lots of news flow coming forward. So Impact, we listed in 2006, as said, we've now got 2 billion shares on issue. We've got share price at about 1.5, 1.6 cents, giving us a market cap of about 30 million. And we've got about 2.3 million in the bank. And we can see the share price made a bit of a recovery in the last few weeks. And that was actually driven by the results of our soil sampling at Arkun. And probably as much for the lithium as it is for the nickel. But we can see here the last, went forwards there. The reason for that is that we had we weren't such great results from a copper project that we were drilling in the Lachlan Fold Belt. And so we're sort of emerging really from a 3-month period of sort of poor results and poor outcomes. And we're certainly seeing a turnaround in the share price. We've had very strong support from German shareholders over the years, and including ABC, which is a subsidiary of Deutsche Balaton, which Tony mentioned, and we're one of the many investments here in the Australian resources sector. So on the up right now, so we'll look at Broken Hill. I spoke about this project last year at the conference, and it's mainly known for some very high grades of all the 6 PGMs. So we've heard some good grades of platinum and palladium, but this project also has exceptional grades of rhodium, osmium, iridium, and ruthenium. And you can count on the fingers of one hand around the world where you can find projects that have got high grades of all 6 PGMs. So there's something very special here, and we have done quite a bit of work with a number of university groups around Australia, including currently UWA, and I think there's a couple of the students in the room right now that are working on the project for us. And we're really mainly focused in the belt on the left, as you're looking at it, on the right-hand side, in the top right-hand corner there. This map shows our ground holding there and the scale at the bottom 10 kilometres. And you can see that we've got an exceptionally large ground holding. We're up to nearly 1,000 kilometres of ground. A lot of that's driven by our work for silver, lead, zinc, copper, which we've been working on in the background. But really the focus has been on the Morkai, Platinum Springs, Red Hill, and Little Broken Hill Gabbro trend that you can see there in the top right-hand corner. So we'll look at Morkai, Platinum Springs, and Little Broken Hill Gabbro. So this is Morkai to Platinum Springs. It's basically a 9 to 10 kilometre long chonolith system. You've heard that word bandied around a number of times today. It's sort of a continuous to discontinuous set of mafic, ultramafic intrusions, and it's really dripping in PGEs, nickel and copper in rock chip samples over the entire length of its trend. Some exceptional grades up to the ounce dirt for platinum and palladium, and percents of nickel and copper. And one of the things, though, is that it's proven difficult to drill this thing out. But when you do get into the sulphide, the massive sulphide, you see some exceptional grades. And there's a picture here from our diamond drill core from a few years ago. And it's 0.6 metres, and you can read it there. Looks as an ounce of platinum and palladium, 1.5 grams of gold. It's 15% nickel copper combined. There's silver in there, cobalt, and then grades of 1 to 2 grams of rhodium, iridium, osmium, and ruthenium. And this is all in fresh material, basically, from surface. So it is probably the richest ore in Australia if we can actually find a large enough area of it that's got massive sulphide. There's a lot of PGE-only mineralisation here, and that is one of the challenges at Broken Hill, is that how do we actually focus for PGE exploration? In particular if it's PG only, because it is difficult. And the reason it's difficult is that it's impossible to see them in hand specimen. And they call them no-see-em zones in North America, because you just have these boring-looking green rocks, as we see here, a picture from the Lac des Iles mine. which I was fortunate enough to visit about 10 years ago, and yet it's running 18 grams. And so you can't use a handheld XRF to detect them. You have to send them to the lab, and conventionally that takes a long time, and it just slows your exploration program down. But we were fortunate during the big program that we did late last year that we managed to define, via some machine learning and various other techniques that we threw at it, a vector that we can measure with a handheld XRF instrument, which actually allowed us to direct the drill program drilling as it was active, because there's a direct relationship between our ratio and the grade of platinum plus palladium plus gold. And that's shown here in the graph. So it's a log linear relationship, and basically once the ratio gets above sort of 2 to 5, you're starting to get some indications of grade. And by the time it gets sort of 10 and certainly above 20, you're in gram plus material. And so that allows us to sort of move the drill rig around and do a lot more drilling before getting any assays back. And it's really revolutionized what we've done at Broken Hill. And this ratio that we're seeing here, this cross-section here, is basically the first coherent zone of mineralization that's been put together in 40 years of work at Platinum Springs with the detailed drilling that we've done. And we can see that we've defined, basically shown in red, is a channel at the base of the ultramafic, which is in purple there. And we can see, if you can't probably see the drill hole numbers, but basically there's 2 drill holes on the right, 16 and 17, and we were getting sort of lowish ratio numbers, and we moved the drill rig around and we sort of jumped across this whole can't read it myself there, but basically moved the drill rig backwards and forwards until we pinged right in the center there, the highest ratio number, and the assay returned 1 meter at 3.3% nickel, 1% copper, and 22 grams of 7 PGEs. So it was an exceptional outcome, and defined the geometry of these things for the first time. And so in this particular section, this isn't too dissimilar to some of the Kambala channels you've also heard about today. It's about 1 to 7 meters thick, 20 to 100 meters wide, but we have yet to be able to define something that's got a great strike length, and that's really the challenge now that we face going forward, using our drilling and our ratios to track this channel along strike to the north and to the south, and see if we can actually turn it into something that's got some legs to it. I think there's a significant chance of that, because at the grades that we're talking about, we only need a few million tons to make this company extremely successful. So that's where we're headed, and there's a 9-kilometre trend. I should have pointed out the only drilling that's been done on that entire 9-kilometre trend is down at the south at Platinum Springs, and the rest of the area is untouched. And so huge potential to find more of these channels as we drill north and work our way forward. So we'll look at Little Broken Hill Gabbro. Now this is a 7-kilometre long intrusion, and hadn't really had much work done. There's a reason for that. We can see parts of it quite clear on the magnetic data, some very strongly magnetic features there. We did an interpretation of that data, and it's quite clear there are multiple different segments of it. Some of them are magnetic, some of them are not. But the principal reason it's never been explored was there's a thin layer of cover over the top. So there'd been some shallow auger drilling, but only 1 drill hole greater than 25 meters depth before we turned up. And so we started off really doing quite a lot of scientific work, as I mentioned, with various universities. And without dwelling on it, there's been I've spoken about this a number of times over the years. Broken Hill was in the same place, and these intrusions formed at the same time as the giant Jinshuan deposit, a large disseminated nickel copper sulphide deposit in China, and during the breakup of the Rhodinian supercontinent. So the area was in the right place at the right time. I faced a bit of criticism for looking for nickel here over the years, but from a geodynamic point of view, there is nothing stopping a major ore body being formed here. Done quite a detailed interpretation of the intrusion, and basically it's full of all the right things. We believe there's different compartments, there's different phases of magmatic activity in through here. We've identified 5 or 6 different phases of the gabbro, but most importantly, we've identified these fault structures shown in the red boxes, which are called feeder zones, which we believe were active during the intrusion of the Little Broken Hill gabbro. And those are very good zones to look for massive sulphide. So we did the first ever drill program at depth there at Little Broken Hill last year, and this is we've just turned the figure around here, and what I've shown in blue are those feeder zones and the important faults that were active during the emplacement of the intrusion. And whilst it might be a little small, what we've identified is basically intrusion is about 7 kilometres long. We've drilled about 1.5 kilometres at the northern end Rockwell, covering one of those feeder zones, and we're getting extensive PGEs and also copper virtually in every drill hole that's penetrated the lower contact of the intrusion. It's completely untouched, as I say. So there's an area at the Rockwell, and then the other thing that we did in the central area, there's a leakage, what we call the leakage anomaly there. We did some shallower RC drilling and got some quite reasonable responses for PGEs and copper, and we believe that's leaking up the feeder zone from something that could be quite significant below. We've got a first look at the mineralisation here as well in the diamond drill hole. We can see some disseminated mineralisation here. It's PGE-rich sulphide mineralisation. For those of you who are interested in these things, there's some K feldspar and biotite there, which makes it a very interesting deposit in its own right, and all very exciting for such an early phase of drilling. And this is a cross-section, and you should probably look at the scale there because that goes down about 100 metres. And if you looked at Tony's sections at Andover, the really good mineralisation doesn't start until below 100 metres. So this thing has only been drilled in a few places down below 100 metres. We've got lots of smoke. We think we're in the outer zones of something that could be very significant. We're sort of getting up to sort of 30 and 40 metre true width thicknesses of low-grade PGEs in the basal ultramafic. But we can see higher grade zones are sort of a metre there at 2.3 grams PGEs. We've got nickel and copper associated with it, 8 metres at 1.3, etc. And we think that this is trying to form one of those channels. We're looking for the same channel geometry that we've seen at Platinum Springs at the base of the Little Broken Hill Gabbro. So, and we think there's a huge potential to find those. The ratio has actually worked at Broken Hill because it's quite clear we're going to need a lot of drilling here as well. And except it is slightly different, and we've identified two significant trends which, depending where you are in the intrusion, control the PGE mineralisation. But very interestingly, there's that little red dot at the top of trend 1, and it sort of looks like it's related. And this is actually from the leakage anomaly that we were talking about before. And this is the long section through that sort of central part of the area. It's parallel to our interpreted feeder zone. And we can see in the bottom right-hand corner there, we've got our 4 metres at 1.5 grams of gold and 0.13% copper. Now, that's in a vein, and it sort of looks like it might be later, but it's quite clear from the trend work that we've done that it's part of the late fluids being expelled from this deposit. And we think that it's coming up, it's fractionated from something that's much deeper, and you can see that we've got a target there at depth. And we sort of wonder what sort of thing could be there. Just for comparison with scale again, this is the giant Voisey's Bay deposit in Canada. It's a different setting, but it's certainly the same geometry and the same sort of scale. These things are showed here at the same scale. And the significant thing there is that the real significant massive sulphide material was found 400 to 500 metres at depth below Barron Gabbro, and going through a disseminated sulphide zone on the way in there. And we think there's a real potential for that, obviously, in this area with some very deep drilling and using our ratio to guide it. I always show this just in case you think we're only looking for large world-class deposits. And this is the Savannah deposit at the same scale, and there's a small little blob in the middle there which you wouldn't even know was on this map. And again, that's at the same scale. So there's plenty of scope to find something like a Savannah in this area. So, as I mentioned, we've sort of come back home. We've been stymied by COVID in New South Wales at Broken Hill. We did want to be back there drilling for this last quarter, and we had another major drill program planned. That's obviously going to be pushed back into next year. And so on the back of the Julimar discovery, we were probably fairly late in the piece, but the project was brought to us, and we can see our area there in white. The Arkun project, there were some regional soil geochemical anomalies from the CSIRO database and some private work that had been done. And so we undenied, but eventually pegged that ground and announced that on a Friday morning. And on that Friday afternoon, Anglo-American Corporation pegged 10,000 square kilometres around us. So it was quite clear they'd been thinking about getting into this area, and we just put them to the post, and so they decided to act before the rest of the ground was taken out. And one of the things, we purchased another little project bow, and it's quite clear throughout the southwest, and Alex Dorsch talked about that this morning, there's hundreds of magnetic anomalies through this southwest terrain that have never been touched, must be very prospective for PGEs, and I think, as he mentioned, that we will see more than one discovery coming out of this area over the next few years, and I think there's a really good chance we could get that on our Arkun project. So we've completed our first pass soil sampling. Now, working the wheat belt is a little bit difficult. There's lots of landowners and farmers to work, but we, using some new target generation technology, had come up with probably about 15, 17 targets, 15 on this map for nickel copper sulphide, and we went out and sampled those just along the roads as close as we could get to the targets. We've had 6 of them come in with very significant numbers for nickel, copper, platinum, palladium and gold, and that separates it from just, say, high nickel and copper in a mafic rock, and there's plenty of mafic rocks out through here, but the fact we're getting platinum, palladium and gold with it suggests to us very strongly that there's significant mineralisation here. And there are also 5 other lower priority targets, other sort of warm coloured dots there, and even the ones that are coloured blue, we're probably some distance away from the target. So on the back of this, we've actually, I'll show you a couple of the targets here. Difficult to see the scale perhaps, but we've got areas, hundreds of metres along these traverses with hugely elevated numbers for all of those 5 metals, and over many kilometres, and also coincident with gravity anomalies and magnetic anomalies. So we've been pretty pleased with the outcome of the new target generation technology we've been employing, and we've kind of gone berserk, and we've actually pegged a whole lot more ground throughout WA, and there'll be more of that to come shortly. So, but like everyone else, we actually managed to find some lithium, cesium, tantalum anomalies in the area as well. So that was probably the main driver of the share price when we announced this. Again, this was unexpected as such, but again, not to be unexpected, because we've done what we do in other terrains. We've pegged these large ground holdings, and one of the outcomes is that you always find what you're not looking for. And so we've certainly found very significant anomalies for LCT pegmatites, and we'll be following those up as well. So we're on the ground sort of virtually as we speak. We've got follow-up soil programs going. We've got extensive landowner negotiations to get through, but I'm 100% confident we're going to have multiple drill targets here in 2022. And so just a couple of examples of the lithium anomalies. And again, they run for many hundreds of metres across this trend and across the strike. So we think there's real body to these things. They're not just isolated little pegmatites. They're part of fairly significant fields of these things. And the reason people haven't seen them, and we'll talk about this in the future, is that this area is just covered by weathered material. It's not very deep, but it just prevents anybody from recognising the rock types. So unless you've actually taken the sample, you really haven't got a clue what's there. So all pretty exciting for us. And the last couple of slides to finish. Look, Doonie, this is gold. We're out east of the Burns discovery. It's a relatively new style of gold mineralisation in this area, copper gold with magnetite. And we've got a walk-up drill target. We're fully permitted to work there. We're just trying to pin down the drill rig, and we should be drilling there hopefully by late November. And we've got some pretty significant gold anomalies to drill there. So look, we're in the middle of a pivot back to WA, rationalising our eastern ground holdings, eastern states holdings. We've done 2 deals. We've got 1 million shares in A8G, and if you've been following the ASIC pump and dump, it wasn't us that was trying to ramp the share price, but we did the deal at 10 cents and they went to 40 cents, but we're escrowed until May, unfortunately. And a couple of other deals that are in the pipeline. But the big news will come from Dunia with our drilling, and in particular from Arkun as we get back into that area and the other ground holdings that we've got. And I always show this normally every year, but look, we've been around for a while, and Tony's shown that whatever you do, just keep going and never give up before you get to the end, provided you're in the right area. And so thanks for your time, and keep your eye on what we're doing.